that our mindset is our greatest limitation. More than anything else is the stories we tell ourselves. I've consistently told myself that I had bad genetics and that I would always struggle with my weight. And for many, many years, that kept me stuck in a vicious cycle of overeating and then undereating and then feeling bad about myself and then feeling really stuck in that process. And so it's only when you're able to shift your thinking and then align your actions with that new mindset and with your values that you're able to create a very different potential for yourself.
I'm thrilled to have Cosi on the show today. She's an exceptional mindset coach who has helped countless people overcome mental barriers and unlock their true potential. What sets Cosi apart is her ability to not only share her wisdom, but to embody it, constantly striving to grow, learn, and evolve in every area of her life. In this episode, Cosi opens up with honesty and vulnerability about her personal journey, including her incredible achievement as the wellness overall state champion in bodybuilding. Her story is both inspiring and relatable. She offers powerful insights into resilience and self-improvement. What makes this conversation great are the actionable tips and strategies Cosi shares to help you shift your mindset, silence your inner critic, and take meaningful steps towards your goals. I know they worked as I've been testing and using them. Welcome, Cosi, to the D8 Training Podcast. Thank you, Cosi, for coming into the D8 Training Podcast. I heard you recently speak at a masterclass event on mindset, and I really loved your journey on fitness and mindset and how you went to competing in bodybuilding. In addition, how you approach mindset coaching and how you're helping others shift their limiting beliefs, their self-doubt, and really help them identify what lights them up. So I have to admit, I'll be honest, I selfishly invited you on this podcast so that I can pick your brain and learn more. So thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat to you more.
Let's kick off and we'll get straight into the bodybuilding competition and then move later into the mindset. What inspired you to compete bodybuilding?
So I'd been training for about 7 to 8 years and I really needed the challenge, I think, after that point. And in particular, I really struggled with consistency. So maintaining that consistent eating. The exercise was pretty consistent, but it's mainly the eating that I struggled with. And I was doing a lot of that all or nothing, eating really well during the week, really struggling to eat within, balanced way on the weekends. Competing was a way for me to maintain that consistency and also just push myself in a way that I hadn't before.
I'm going to touch on that eating because I find that I do that sometimes, especially around certain times of the month. How do you manage that now and how did you go about changing the eating?
When I went into competing, it was so easy to eat in a consistent way because I had that very clear value and goal around I wanted to compete and I wanted to get up on stage. And I think it was about 4 months after I started the prep journey. So that was easy. Now I'm actually struggling a lot more. I think when you don't have those external limitations and that really big goal that you're working towards, it's much harder to maintain the eating. So I'm doing a lot of work currently to work out what some of my thoughts are around eating and the ways that I give myself permission to at times completely overindulge and eat more than my body actually needs to function. So that's something I'm currently working through at the moment.
Keep me posted because that's something I'll do. I go, I'm all in or I'm not. So if I'm going to eat the chocolate, I'll just eat the block.
Yeah, I'm the same.
So you won the Wellness State Champion title. Can you take us through the physical and emotional journey leading up to that moment?
Physically, it was around getting 4 things straight. So it was mainly eating, so making sure that I was eating within the calories that my coach gave me and also the macronutrients. So eating the right amount of fats, carbohydrates and proteins. The other thing was around exercise, so training with that intensity and with that real focus on the particular muscle groups that I was trying to build. Then it was around sleep. Sleep was actually probably the most important thing. So ensuring I was getting up to, I think it was 7 to 8 hours a night minimum, and then keeping my stress level down. So those are the 4 things that I had to get right consistently throughout the prep period. However, the hardest thing was actually the mindset shift that I had to go through in order to prepare myself to step up on stage. So I really wrestled with a lot of, I guess, self-worth issues and shame around being seen and performing. So I've never grown up around dancing or doing the performance side of things. That's something that never ever came naturally to me and actually really scared me. So when I started to pose, I noticed that whilst I wanted to pose in a particular way and have that flow, my body almost didn't let me do that, because I would stiffen up and then I'd want to rush off stage as quickly as possible to just get it over and done with. And when I really went a bit deep to work out what was driving that physiological reaction in my body, it was this belief that I wasn't worthy of the time. And so if I could get off as quickly as possible, then that would give other people that were more worthy that time of being seen. So that was by far the hardest thing, and it took a lot of practice to overcome that.
Was there a key moment that changed, that you started believing that you were worthy of the time to be on stage?
There was one class in particular where it was the first time we had to do this, where we would all go to the class and we would stand up in front of all the other people learning how to pose, and we would have to go through our whole routine and then get critiqued by the other people in the class. I got up there and my body completely froze. So I lost flow completely. It was one of those really embarrassing moments where I didn't do so well, so people really struggled to even find anything positive to say about my performance. And I thought, oh wow, this is really my low point. And I thought at that point I could obviously stop doing it and just resign myself to the idea that I wasn't made for this, or I'm not good at performance or posing, or I could use it as an opportunity to practice more and to do more work on that. So it was at that point where I really shifted my thinking from saying, well, I'm not good at this, or I'm never going to be good at this, to, well, this is a challenge, and every single challenge is preparing me for growth and for evolution. And so it's my opportunity to actually level up and work through something that's obviously really deeply rooted. So that was probably the moment. And luckily, I think the next day I had a check-in with my coach, and there was a performance coach that just happened to be in Adelaide that day that was doing some work with other athletes around mindset and the way that your body physiologically kind of responds to these mindset blocks. And so I went to her class and I found that so helpful. So things kind of aligned and I just kept going.
It's amazing you made that decision. You were like, yep, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through the uncomfortable. If you can pass that uncomfortable, when you get out on the other side, yeah, it's great. But you went through that uncomfortable, and the people that you needed got attracted, like that performance coach. Bodybuilding does require immense discipline. How did you manage to balance the demands of training, nutrition, the mindset work, while maintaining all the other aspects of your life?
This was hard because I was probably juggling a few things at the time. The biggest thing was I was very, very clear on my why, and I knew it was time limited. So very clear on how bodybuilding, or this, doing this for like 4 or 5 months, how that aligned with my values and also my goals, which were pretty short term at the time. And then beyond that, I had to make certain sacrifices in my life to actually create that space. So I stopped socializing by going out with friends and going out to dinners and those sorts of things, and started socializing by doing sauna dates or going on walks at the beach and that sort of stuff. So that was a big change. It was actually quite nice because I developed much closer friendships with people at the gym, and also just provided my out of gym friends opportunities to try some different things as well. So it actually worked out quite well, and I was able to do it because I knew it was quite short-lived.
Do you still do those sort of dates now, the sauna dates?
I do, yeah. So you just notice that they just make you feel so good. So it's something I've definitely kept up.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what we often tell our clients when we're coaching them to improve their health and their fitness is, hey, instead of going out drinking on the Friday night, why don't you go for a walk instead? Just changing a few of those habits. So what advice would you give someone looking to overcome self-doubt and achieve something that seems like an impossible goal like bodybuilding?
First of all, just whatever goal you're wanting to work towards, just make sure that it's aligned with your authentic self and your values and what you want for yourself. So you've got to be really clear on your why, and your why has to come from, not from external means around I'll compete and then I'll look a certain way and so then I'll be worthy. So it's really got to be from I'm doing it for myself because it's something I want, not about, I guess, what other people think. The other thing I would say to people is just that our mindset is our greatest limitation. More than anything else is the stories we tell ourselves. I've consistently told myself that I had bad genetics and that I would always struggle with my weight. And for many, many years, that kept me stuck in a vicious cycle of overeating and then undereating and then feeling bad about myself and then feeling really stuck in that process. And so it's only when you're able to shift your thinking and then align your actions with that new mindset and with your values that you're able to create a very different potential for yourself.
We notice that we have a limiting belief or we are stuck in that vicious cycle. What's something we can do to overcome that?
So first of all, if you can start spotting your thinking, that is a huge challenge. So we have thousands of thoughts that go through our mind every single day. It's really interesting because we make choices about which thoughts we're going to give more importance to than others and what we're going to prioritize. So I think the first thing is just starting to pick your thoughts and work out how they make you feel about yourself. So if you find that they're particularly self-critical or they're very limiting, very all or nothing, those sorts of things, if you can start to pick those out, and then start to gently challenge them. So start questioning, well, hang on a second, what evidence do I have to support this belief? What evidence do I have to support the belief that I've got bad genetics and I can't ever achieve these physical changes in my body, for example? So come up with some evidence for and against those beliefs. If you're really struggling, you can also question how, if your friend came to you and made this very same statement to you, how would you respond? What are some things that you might say to help your friend challenge their thinking or shift their perspective? Then you can choose a thought that's a lot more balanced. So almost like an affirmative thought. And what we know about these affirmative thoughts is that they're actually a lot more powerful than the limiting beliefs. And that is because it takes conscious effort to come up with a thought that is different to the limiting belief. If you pick that affirmative thought and you start to focus on that, it will start to shift your thinking.
So what's an example of an affirmative thought?
So as opposed to saying, I've got bad genetics, and that's a very fixed mindset as well, I would say something like, with hard work and consistent effort, I can achieve whatever I want. In my case, I was able to compete because I was able to put that consistent hard work with the support of a coach as well into practice, and I was able to live in line with those values and goals that I had set for myself.
That's a good segue into coaching. I love what you're doing. You're helping women reconnect with their authentic self. What inspires you to focus on that work and go into the coaching and the mindset?
Big change for me commenced 4 years ago that I left my marriage of almost 18 years. So I was with my partner since high school and we're very, very happily married, but we just found that over the years we grew apart and we started wanting different things from life. I was faced with the terrifying decision of having to end my marriage. That was hard because in having to do that, I had to really face a lot of my own limiting beliefs around who I was as a person on my own side of the relationship, what my family and friends would think about me if I made a decision like that. So that was very much based on societal pressure that I received, but also just pressure from family. And I grew up in a migrant family as well. So I had all of these things kind of weighing me down and worrying about the quality of my life if I was to leave my partner. So it was through that I really found a love for the mindset work in particular.
And I know that's one of my biggest struggles too. I'm always like, what would they say if I do this? I find that regardless of what I do, they're still going to comment if they have an opinion. If they're a negative person, they'll find something negative in what I do today or the change that I make.
100%, yeah. And I think you just start to realise that you're the one living your life and you're the best judge of what is best for you. And if you make that decision for yourself, then some people won't understand it, and that's okay. But you'll find that a lot of people will, and then you'll start to, if you need to build a new community, that eventually will come as well when you're connected to your authenticity.
And I found that to be one of my challenges, accepting that there's some people that just won't get it and I can't try to change them or accept them. Like I look at my grandma and she comes from the traditional background where the woman tends to cook and clean, so very traditional. So when I mentioned that I wasn't the one doing all the cooking, my husband was, she was not able to understand why he was cooking because her husband's never cooked in his life. So it's just accepting, going, okay, don't try to change her, don't try to explain it, that's just her and that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a lot of freedom in that once you make that decision for yourself as well, that you don't have to be bound by other people's expectations.
Definitely. Why is mindset the foundation for creating true and lasting transformation?
The way that you think about things, or the way that you think about yourself, then really impacts how you feel about yourself and how you feel about life in a general sense, and also it impacts your behavior. So often you have to analyze your thinking and make sure that your thinking is very much grounded in your values and your authenticity, because then that's going to shape the behavior that you engage in as well. And then that's how habits form. So it really is the starting place.
When you spoke at that masterclass, you spoke about how you did start with strength training, and it wasn't until you had that mindset shift that you were able to see yourself. So how does that mindset play that role for you and within strength training?
The core of strength training, it's really pushing past your limits and also working through discomfort. So what I learned, and I guess the parallels between strength training and then also the life changes and some of the risks that I had to take in my life to create this life that I think is a lot more authentic and happier for me now, is understanding the beauty in the struggles that you have to go through and the discomfort. That true growth and transformation really does come through those scary moments, those moments where you feel alone and you're really doubting yourself and you're sitting with those really, really uncomfortable feelings. That's where the magic happens. I've only learnt that through experiencing it and through a lot of self-doubt and exploration as well. But yeah, training is very much the same. You're constantly pushing past your limits and through the discomfort.
I remember I couldn't do a chin-up. It took me like 2 years to actually be able to do one chin-up. Once I got that, then all of a sudden, it was within a month that I was able to get 3. And I went 2 years of not doing any, within like that short time being able to get more, and how it improved my mindset was amazing. So how can we overcome our barriers to strength training or doing an exercise? Because a lot of people will start, they'll come into the gym, they'll start the exercise, they'll get into a real good routine, they'll start getting good results. They're either lifting more, they're looking better through developing the muscles, and then all of a sudden they just stop.
It's just understanding that we expect that our change process is going to be very, very linear, but it's actually full of peaks and troughs. So it's understanding the plateaus that come a really natural part of the process. And so certainly with me going through the comp prep, there were times where there were weeks, if not a month, where my weight would not change at all. And that was quite scary because I was obviously working towards a particular outcome around body fat percentage and all those sorts of things that I needed to be on stage. And so when that happened, I'd get quite scared. And it's working through with my coach, who would often be like, no, just trust the process. Just sit with it, keep doing what you're doing, manage your stress, manage your sleep, and trust that even if you're not getting the outcome you're wanting right now, focus on the bigger picture, that with consistency you will eventually get there. So it's just pushing through those plateaus and just not letting the mindset stop you and get you off track.
And one thing I've learned, I actually like Ed Milet, so he speaks about it. What you do today, you won't actually see the results for sometimes 3 to 6 months, even years later, but it's putting that into place. Because I could eat unhealthy for a week now, but it probably won't break out in my face for 3-4 weeks.
100%. Yes, always just looking at the bigger picture as well and what you're working towards. And sometimes if you have a bit of a break, that's okay too. We engage in that all or nothing thinking too of where, well, I haven't exercised for a week, so now it's done. Or I've had like a bit of chocolate and now I'm going to have the whole block, or I'm going to eat like that for the whole day or the whole week, whatever it might be. So it's kind of being able to spot when you're engaging in that all or nothing thinking and shifting it. And also the other thing to spot is I can't. Anytime you say to yourself, I can't, or I should, or I must, all of these kind of absolute terms.
What can you say instead?
I can try, or instead of saying I should do this, you can say I choose to do this. This is a choice that I make for myself. I think a really important mindset shift is, rather than looking at exercise or even healthy eating as a form of punishment or something that's imposed upon you because you have to do it for whatever reason, starting to reframe it and to really focus on what this is an act of self-love. This is what I'm doing to nourish myself, to move my body in a way that's like caring and good for me. So those sorts of shifts can help too.
One thing I say to my kids where they go, I have to wipe the dishes, I go, no, you get to wipe the dishes. Not that they see it that way. I go, there's lots of kids that would love to be in your position wiping dishes that maybe are living on the streets.
100%. That perspective shift is so important.
So how do you stay motivated during plateaus or setbacks, like during that strength training?
I trust the process, and a really big thing is I don't rely on motivation. I think that's something I had to learn very early on, because one of the reasons why it took me so long to start going to the gym was because I was relying on this motivation to come. One day I'll be motivated and then I'll go. And so I learned that motivation only comes from doing. So the more you do something, the more motivating it becomes, because it's quite reinforcing and quite rewarding as well, the more you train and move your body in that way. So that's a very big shift, is just to keep doing it, even if you don't feel like doing it. And even if you're doubting yourself, again, just show up anyways. You can change it up. If you need a break, have a break. Go a bit lighter if you need to. Don't push yourself as hard for that session. Just keep showing up, maintain that behaviour.
And I noticed you've spoken a bit about you've had coaches here, the performance coach, your training coach. How important are coaches and a team around you?
Hugely important, and even for me, it's something that I do all the time. I just really see the value in it, because someone's going to see things from a different perspective. We all have our blind spots, and what I love about coaching is that there's so many different coaches out there and specialties out there as well, so for whatever you need. So I've consistently worked with coaches. Certainly posing coaches were a huge part of my comp prep, and my personal trainer as well. He was incredible, so I'm always doing that sort of work.
We don't need to do it ourselves these days. Like, we often rely, okay, if we're going to succeed, we need to do it by ourselves, where the best people in the world never do. Look at the athletes, they've all got coaches, their strength coach, their mindset coach, their physios. So what role does the inner critic play in holding people back, and how can they challenge it effectively?
So I think the inner critic is one of these things in the mindset space that we really try to, one, identify and label when it happens, and when you're starting to notice that you're thinking in a really self-critical way, and then really put a stop to it, because what we find is that there's no value in those critical messages at all. In fact, it actually holds us back a lot of the time. It doesn't often push us to do better. It just makes us feel like we're not worthy, or it lowers our self-esteem and our belief in our ability to do things. So I would also look at where those critical messages came from. Oftentimes this inner critic develops when we're very young, from people in our lives, like caregivers in our life and other important people that criticised us and put us down. So I remember, for example, when I was posing, one memory that I probably hadn't really thought about for a very long time was an experience I had in primary school, where I was learning a dance routine, and I had a very critical teacher that would often criticise me, and he would criticise me in front of the class. So that's where that shame came from, around movement and performance and those sorts of things. So it was only through the posing experience that I was able to reconnect with that. And then what we do through the mindset work is we start to heal those inner critical messages. So yeah, if you can label it, identify where it stems from, that can be very helpful. And then you can just start to respond to that inner critical voice in a caring, compassionate way towards yourself. So almost as if you were talking to your best friend. Shift your focus to more caring or productive messages, or those affirmative beliefs.
Something that I, especially in the mornings, that I struggle with is I create like a soap opera drama in my mind. I'll wake up and I must have been subconsciously thinking about it, knowing that I might remember something my mum said, or that this person did. Or what's a good way to pivot those thoughts or get myself to move away from it?
So first of all, I mean, it's great that you're identifying it and that you're labeling it, because what can often happen is, for some people, they'll just notice that it drags their mood down. They might not know why it's happened. So it's really great that you can identify that you've got that going on in your mind, and that you've got these really critical messages playing out, saying to yourself, I'm going to choose not to listen to this. I don't believe in this message. I don't believe in what this part of me is saying to me, this inner critic is saying, and I'm going to choose to focus on this instead. I know that I'm hardworking. I know. So it depends what the actual critical thought might be, for example. It's about finding ways to shift that thought to something that's more positive and actually more grounded in reality, because the inner critic really has no benefit or use for us at all.
That's a great tip. And I really liked what you said earlier about what would you say to your friend or your child, because sometimes the way that I'd speak to myself, I would have no friends. No one would want to be my friend if I spoke to them like that.
And we're all the same. We're all wired in the same way.
For someone that's feeling stuck or disconnected, what is the biggest obstacle standing in their way, and how can they begin to overcome it?
The way I usually do it with clients is I would go through a number of questions, asking them things like, what lights you up, what makes you happy, what gets you up in the morning, what are some of the activities that you love the most, what makes you feel most energized. So I'd be asking those sorts of questions. I also go through an activity with my clients where we go back in time. This is like a visualization activity where we can connect with, well, what did you do as a child? What were the things that made you feel happiest? How did you play? Who were your favourite characters? We can get some really helpful tips from this. It very much stems from childhood. And then you go through the cycles of your memory into adolescence and seeing how those ideas or values changed, and then obviously in adulthood as well. And through this activity you can see, one, how it changes, but also how societal messages and messages from critical people in our life really start to hold us back from living in line with these values, because often as kids we're so free and so happy, and then that really shifts throughout our lives as well because we start to get programmed in different ways. That's one thing that I would do with clients. And then helping them really connect with their values. So who they want to be in this world, how do they want other people to feel in their presence, what do they want other people to say about them, what's their legacy, those sorts of things. So it's a long process, but a really beautiful one too, where you can reconnect with what truly matters to you.
I love that, and I've never thought of it like that, how you mentioned talking about what they were like as a child, what they loved, because we often think back to the negatives, what happened, what didn't work well, whereas going back to, hey, what was it that I was good at?
And what did I enjoy?
Yeah, that's fantastic. And kids, they have this passion for life. We were at the soccer on Friday night. I was there with my son, and Adelaide United scored a goal, and he was so excited that he just took his top off, started like waving it around, and I'm completely mortified and about to go tell him off, and sort of looked around and I'm like, we're at the soccer, it's fine, he's smiling, he's having fun. The other boys started taking their tops off and we're good.
Oh, and they were in the moment and they were just really enjoying that experience. Like, what a beautiful thing. The reason why I think we're very programmed as adults for loss aversion, so we focus on things that are tied to our survival, so we try to avoid things that could hurt us. So that's why from caveman days we've developed with the negativity bias, this focus on negative things rather than things going well. If I was to give you a whole basket of puppies and a brown snake, what would you focus on?
The brown snake.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's just how we're programmed as human beings to do that. So we have to do a lot of work to unprogram that. Through neuroplasticity, and this is the idea that our brain is quite plastic, we're able to form or to strengthen neural connections in our brain when we engage in behaviour that's different. So the more we repeat that same behaviour, like, being able to label your inner critic and then picking a more affirmative or supportive message to focus on instead, the more we practice this, the more we're strengthening these neural pathways, and that becomes the norm. But it just takes a lot of time to reprogram that.
So how do you work with your clients to reprogram and get the results that they want?
I find like a lot of mindset work can be superficial. So like I said, you've got, thousands of thoughts every single day. And if we think of the core belief, so if we go a bit deeper, the thought might be, you haven't heard from a friend in a while. So you might think to yourself, this person doesn't like me. And you have this throughout your day and throughout your week. You might have experiences like this where you really start to doubt yourself. If you go a lot deeper than that, which is where I do a lot of the work, it's typically driven by a very deep core belief, which could be, for example, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, I'm unwanted. And so I do a lot of work at that level, at the much deeper core belief level, rather than just at the thoughts that you have throughout your day. But the reason why I do that is because that ends up shifting not only how we think about ourselves, but how we feel about ourselves. So if I was to say to you, can you tell me all the ways in which you're worthy? You would be able to write a book about it. Logically, intellectually, you'll be able to come up with all the reasons why you're a worthy person, because we are all inherently worthy. However, when these situations happen where you haven't heard from a friend for a while, for example, we start to feel really triggered and we start to feel like we're unworthy. And so I feel like the most powerful work happens at that much deeper level. And the way that I would do it is through something called imagery rescripting. So we might go back into, an experience in childhood where you were also made to feel really unworthy. and together we would work to change the meaning that you've attached to that experience.
It's called imagery
Rescripting. Another way is inner child healing work, shadow work.
All sounds like also the questions that you ask yourself.
So it might be, if you go back into this childhood memory, where if we think of the example provided about my teacher being critical to me in front of my friends, going back into that image and having a healthy adult step in and perhaps tell that teacher to stop speaking to me in that way and say, you know what, you're having fun and you're really enjoying yourself and you're practicing and you're going to get better with practice. And so just shifting the messages that I received as a child, for example.
We all have those experiences. We all have an example of a teacher that was fantastic, that was great, that we liked, and then we have the teachers that put us down, and we tend to remember the ones that put us down, shame that we felt. We're all working through it, which is great. Whereas before, I know, especially being younger, I thought I was always the only one that was going through this.
Yes, oh, absolutely. We feel very alone in that, but it's probably one of the most common things. I think we all have an inner critic. I haven't met anyone that doesn't have one. So, and that stems from something. So yeah, we're definitely not alone.
What's been the most fulfilling part so far of your mindset coaching?
The most fulfilling part is connecting with like-minded women and just supporting women to find their voice and to work out what life they want to live for themselves and helping them live in line with that. That's been the most enjoyable part of my journey so far. Yeah, that empowerment that comes from not only the work that I do, but then the support that women are providing each other within the community as well, which is a really beautiful thing.
Sounds like a really positive environment. And what's a daily practice or habit that you can recommend for someone to stay aligned with their vision, their abundance, thriving and fulfillment?
A number of things. I think gratitude practice is great. So ending your day before you go to sleep with gratitude. So reflecting on a few things. It doesn't have to be a number, like it can be 3 things, it could be 1 thing, it really doesn't matter, whatever feels right for you, but things that you're grateful for that day. And the most important part of that practice is focusing on the reflection, so why that was important for you, what it was about that experience that was meaningful to you. And so that's one thing that I would do. And we know that the thing we do before bed is what we end up dreaming about, and it's really programmed into our subconscious, so that can really help as well. The other thing I would do is a practice of meditation, however that works for you. So really kind of grounding and becoming a lot more present and quietening down all the external noise and that inner critic, all of those sorts of things, and just coming back to your center and to what matters to you as well as a person. And you can do that meditation practice in whatever way that works for you. It could be deep breathing, it could be connecting with your intuition. There are so many free resources out there. It's just important to find something that works for you.
Yeah. What ways can you do meditation?
You could do it in any way. So you could do walking meditation if you want to. You could do mindful awareness, just even things like grounding using your 5 senses. So really taking your time, and that can be that could take a few minutes of your day where you're just grounding and you're paying attention. You're using all of your 5 senses to see what you're experiencing. And every time you do that, you find something different. Even if it's in the exact same room, you're typically going to see something they haven't seen before, because we get so caught up in our thinking and oftentimes that negativity bias that we just miss what's going on around us.
So for listeners who feel inspired by your story and your mindset coaching, how can they work with you to start their own transformation journey?
So they can just send me a DM via Instagram, or I've also got an intake form that they can fill out, and then we could do a free discovery call to see how this might work for them and if it's something that they want to start embarking on.
Great, and I'll put that all into the show notes. And is it one-on-one that you work with clients?
Yeah, I do some mindset coaching workshops as well, but the majority of my work is one-on-one and it's online as well. Very flexible.
What is one habit that someone can start today to make a positive impact on their training or vitality?
Start with something very small and very manageable. So you really want to build that belief in yourself. So if you start with something it could even be a 10-minute walk a day. It doesn't have to be much. It could be drinking enough water, something very, very simple that makes you feel like, okay, well, I've been able to conquer this, I've done this, which I think is really good. The other thing is finding exercise that you love. I think that's really important, and we don't talk about that enough. I really struggled with cardio for many, many years, and I think that's why I always stopped doing it, because for me, weight training has been something I've loved more, and it just seems to resonate with me. So it's just about finding what you love. That could be dance, it could be walking, it really doesn't matter as long as it's something that gets you moving and that you enjoy doing as well.
Exercise can be anything. There's so many options. I've recently started athletics, doing running races, and it's so much fun, and I'm moving and then around great people. But you go something small and manageable. How long's a discovery call for?
15 minutes, but I always go over. So, yeah.
There we go, that's small. So book a discovery call, find out. You don't know what change or improvement that may lead to.
Yes.
And lucky last question, what does dominate mean to you?
Dominate means to conquer something that you're really struggling with. Like to dominate a fear or to conquer a fear, to push yourself past your limitations is what dominate means. To just be my best self and always striving to push myself further.
I love that. It's such a strong word, but the way you put it, conquer something, is phenomenal. Thank you, Cosi, for coming on. This has exceeded my expectations. I've taken so many notes on things that I can start doing, implementing as well. And I love what you said, to overcome the vicious cycle, to spot the thinking that you're doing, gently challenge the thinking, and then see if you would speak to a friend or a child like that, and then affirm the thought. So I've got lots of practical advice there, and I'm just blown away. I'm almost speechless, which doesn't happen often. So thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've had a great time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the D8 Training Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Your support means the world to us. It helps us grow and continue bringing value to more people. Until next time, dominate your life.